decisive action, very targeted, to make sure that Iran would not be able to get its hands on a nuclear capability. I think he deserves all the praise.
All right. Next question. Let's come to the front here. I think it's BBC.
Yes.
Yes. We'll wait for the mic, please.
Jamal Musawi from BBC Persian TV. You said that attack against Iran was illegal and in accordance with the international law. But today, Kaja Kallas said she is not sure that it was legal and in accordance with international law. Is there any kind of disagreement between you in NATO?
No, there's not, but there will be many views always about international law. I think what the US did last weekend is justified. This is preventing Iran, and this is a request NATO has had for a long time, a position NATO has taken for a long time, that Iran should not get its hand on a nuclear deterrence. So I think it was totally justified what the US did. And I think it's also important that the American president is very much now working to get the ceasefire not only today and yesterday, but to have that ongoing over the coming weeks.
All right. I see FT in the halfway back.
She has to hold it. Secretary General Henry Foy, Financial Times.
Aye.
The floor. Donald Trump has said the US won't agree with the 5%. That's for all of us to do, but not him. Is that fair in an alliance that's built on sharing and unity? And secondly, what will you do if he comes back next year and asks for more than 5? Thank you.
Well, but when it comes to the 5%, there are the two elements. One is the 3.5% core defense spending. The US is more or less there. And when it comes to the 1.5% defense-related spending, we can safely assume that the US is doing that. When you look at their enormous capacity when it comes to fighting cybercrime, hybrid threats, when it comes to their infrastructure investments, when it comes to developing the defense industrial base. So I think we can safely assume that the US is more or less at that 5% already.
All right. Next, I think we'll go over to the left side again, about halfway back. Washington Post. We need a mic.
Thank you, Secretary General Ellen Francis, Washington Post. NATO allies will have to go to great pains to convince people that this money should be spent because of a Russian threat. But some of the comments at this summit suggest that it's all about pleasing President Trump. I think Secretary Rubio called it the Trump summit. Do you agree that it's the Trump summit? And how much of this pledge is about keeping the U.S. president happy? Thank you.
Well, there are two issues to this and to the 5%. One is that there is this consistent ask from the US. This started already with Eisenhower in the 1950s for the Europeans and the Canadians to equalize with what the US is spending. And now, finally, we're going to do that. But obviously, the 3.5 core spending and the total 5% is deeply rooted in the outcome of a process in NATO, the NATO defense planning process, which has led to agreeing by the defense ministers 2 weeks ago on our targets. So what each country needs to do when the call would come, if the call would come, we need you to help because there is an Article 5 situation. And we have calculated that to basically reach those targets, we need to spend 3.5% on core defense and, of course, the 1.5% on defense and security-related spending. So there is this US request, please equalize, because it's not fair that we shoulder much more than the others are doing and that we are carrying more weight than the others are doing. And there is the issue of that it is really necessary because of the long-term threat by the Russians to the whole of the Euro-Atlantic area and also the other upcoming adversaries, and of course the situation with China, where we see this impressive military build-up. So it is both true. The US has consistently had this request now for 60, 70 years, and finally we will do it. And I think that's important. It makes the whole of the alliance more stable and fairer. And there is the need because of Russia and others.
All right. The woman in the third row over on the left side here.
Natalia representing Voice of Ukraine. Secretary General, you have stated that this year Canadians and Europeans have pledged 35 billion into military support to Ukraine, and this is not even the half of the year. In your opinion, what should be expenditure for Ukraine at the end of the year? And what amount of military aid to Ukraine could help Ukraine to win the war, not just survive?
Well, on the first question, it's difficult for me to exactly predict, but you can safely assume is the trajectory in the first almost 6 months now is really north of the trajectory last year, that also by the end of the year it will end up north of the over 50 billion which was pledged in 2024. So I'm positive about that, optimistic, but I'm not going to make a concrete prediction. But we can safely assume that the end result will be positive. And of course, what we are doing here, we have to make sure that Ukraine can stay in the fight, that Ukraine has what it needs to be as strong as possible. But obviously, we are all also working on getting a peace deal done or a long-term ceasefire done. And then we have to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to prevent Vladimir Putin from ever trying this again in the future. And the first layer of that, making sure that Ukraine can defend itself post a peace deal / a long-term ceasefire, obviously is also the support we are now providing to keep them in the fight, which has to do, of course, with training, it has to do with delivering military equipment, so the command in Wiesbaden, but also the various streams of money going into Ukraine, developing Ukrainians' defense industrial base, which still has about a 35 billion spare capacity. So this all together will help Ukraine to be as strong as possible now, but also to deter the Russians post a peace deal / a ceasefire.
All right, let's come to the center section now. I see CNN in the fourth row.
Thank you so much. I want to follow up on what you just said about the strikes in Iran, but first, can I ask you on Article 5, do you believe that Article 5 is subject to interpretation?
Well, Article 5 is absolutely clear, and at the same time, we have always said we will never go into details when exactly Article 5 will be triggered. And why not? Because we don't want to make our adversaries any wiser.
And to follow up on Iran, sir, you just praised the U.S. strikes in Iran, saying that you do believe it will help prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. There have been questions about where that highly enriched uranium is, and if Iran moved it before the United States struck on Saturday night. Do you have concerns about that and whether or not it poses a threat to NATO?
Look what happened last weekend. American B-2s, nobody in the world is able to do this. Only the United States. You are 25% of the world economy. You are by far the biggest military power in the world. Only the United States is capable to do this. So the B-2s, the fantastic pilots in those fighter jets, the bombs which were used to get deep into these nuclear facilities in Iran. Nobody has that type of stuff. And history made you the leader. History made you the ones who have to take action when it is necessary. And I think what President Trump did here is take a very targeted, chirurgical operation to take out as much as possible Iran's capability to get to a nuclear weapon. And I commend him for that. And obviously it's now up to all the studies being done and all the details look into what exactly has been the effect of this. But I'm personally very optimistic that this has dealt a massive blow to Iran.
All right, we have a very full room and limited time. Next question to the front row. There's a mic coming.
Oh, that's good, yeah. Hello, Eelco Bos van Roostal, Nieuwsuur, Dutch TV. You're dealing with a very unpredictable president or friend who has been all over the map on Article 5 in the past.